Welcome to the Tavern Community Podcast. We are joined today by Rachel Brink. Thank you so much for joining us, Rachel.
Thrilled to be here.
Would you like to introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Rachel Brink. I'm the general partner of Redbike Capital. Redbike is an early stage VC fund. We're based here in New York. We invest across pre-seed and seed, vertical AI, Fintech, and healthcare. Prior to that, my background is started my career building billion-dollar brands, spent 15 years working for Procter & Gamble, L'Oreal, Lauder, and then in 2014 co-founded a Y Combinator-backed e-commerce startup. So I'm a little bit more of an OG than you are, but not by
That's
much.
Right. By about 7 years, right?
Yeah. So we were summer of 15, and very proud. Last year we made the list of top YC companies by
Let's
revenue.
go.
Woohoo! Only
Amazing.
took 9 years, but awesome experience. So happy to talk about my journey with Scentbird, and a couple of years ago started to do a lot of advisory work and advisory boards, and eventually launched Redbike about 2 years ago. So
Amazing.
It's been a journey.
Amazing. And you're one of my favorite people in the New York City scene and beyond. So thank you for joining us again. So to start, Rachel, your journey from a 17-year-old immigrant in Boston to a Y Combinator founder and now a VC is very inspiring. What's one lesson from your early days that still guides your work at Redbike Capital?
I think one of the personality traits that's always sort of driven me is I am very, very curious. I'm always driven by that idea of like, if I got here, well, what's a little bit further along? There's a running joke, if you travel with me, the phrase that will inspire fear in anybody that travels with me is, ya que estamos aquí, which means like, once we're here, well, let's just, let's go around the corner, let's go down that staircase, let's go. So that idea of always sort of looking for the curiosity, the what's next, I think it's something that I had very early in my career and has always sort of driven me, and I think it's been quite helpful.
I love that. So your connection with Ju Ryu, sparked by a cold email, led to a $630 million exit for Hero Cosmetics. What advice would you give founders on leveraging networks and serendipitous connections to drive success?
So I think that part of it is, how to leverage your network, and part of it is being really authentic, but also strategic. So, when Ju reached out, Columbia, even though it's an amazing business school, really hadn't focused as much as it should have on entrepreneurship. It was very much driven by banking and consulting jobs. And Ju was just really looking for community. And so I remember she emailed me, she's like, hey, let's go have a coffee. We met in Koreatown. And then we realized that, we both had worked in beauty. She was building Hero Cosmetics, I was building Scentbird. And we just built a rapport. And I think that something that is really important when you're thinking about building community is that idea of, just not the general, like, let me pick your brain. Like, I hate those, hate those emails when people are like, pick my brain. Like, what does that mean? I don't have time for that. I can't figure out how I can help you, and it's not my job.
Yeah.
If you're, and with her, it was very authentic and very much like, I'm dealing with, we're dealing with distribution challenges. How do you think about Target versus Walmart or things like that? And so over time, we always had these conversations back and forth that were really tactical and useful, where we both kind of felt like we had value. And then I was really honored when, she was incredible in that she did not take a lot of money. She did not raise a lot of capital before her exit, but when she did do a pretty significant round, she invited me to join her round, which I was very honored to. And so it was really a full circle when a couple of weeks ago, she was being honored by Columbia Business School for as one of, successful alumni, and invited me to her table. So it's just really nice to see, great people that you've known a long time succeed.
Yeah.
But you also see how hard they work and how they build those building blocks.
That's amazing. I love that. So in your recent post about the Redbike Capital Community Gathering, you highlighted the power of bringing together founders, LPs, and investors. What's the secret sauce to fostering a tight-knit community that drives real collaboration and value for your portfolio companies?
So a couple of things. I think I'll tell you that first of all, I strive for quality over quantity. I think that more and more, I'm sort of allergic to these huge gatherings. I find them just overwhelming, and the value, it's just too hard to get any value out of it. So I prefer more curated, a little bit smaller. I would say that, even the event last night, I have this habit where I just find people I think are fantastic, and obviously I think very highly of our founders. Otherwise, I wouldn't have invested in them.
Yep.
I'm very thankful to my LPs and the sponsors and friends. But they don't necessarily know each other. And so I did have a moment of panic when they all started coming in, where I'm like, these are all great people, but they have no idea, right? But I think that it does require a little bit of thinking and a little bit of like being very self-aware of being aware of other people, to be like, you and you work in healthcare, you should talk to each other, but you wouldn't know this. You and you, you're an AI for R&D, and you work in R&D, go talk to each other.
Yep.
Trying to find, but it takes as the host, like a little bit of preparation, knowing your audience, knowing who's in the room, and sort of navigating and helping people. Because, honestly, we're all humans. We all walk into these rooms and go, I don't know anybody, and who is this, right?
Right. And
so you got to kind of like help them out a little bit. I think that that's really the job of the host.
Yeah.
When I throw these types of events, I sort of think about it like, I'm not here for my conversation. I'm here to do the matchmaking and to have them foster those conversations.
Got it. No, definitely that is some secret sauce, because I love the quality over quantity piece too, because with a smaller curated audience, you can definitely have more of like a hands-on, intentional, warm introduction kind of environment. So you've mentioned the importance of your LPs' trust and partnership. How do you balance the expectations of LPs with the bold, sometimes risky bets you make on early stage founders?
I think you have to be very transparent from the start. Venture is a very specific asset class, and I think you need to spend a lot of time educating. Obviously, there's a wide range of LPs. We have LPs that are institutional and understand venture very well. We have LPs that are high net worths that have never invested in venture but want to support us and are just understanding the asset class. So I think it's really important to be really thoughtful and articulate and give a lot of realistic expectations in terms of risk profile, but also in terms of time frame, right?
Yep.
Because again, venture is a very specific asset class that does have a long time frame. High risk, high reward, long time frames, lots of opportunity, but there are downsides. And so I think that having that conversation early and being I think people want to trust people that are like, I'm not a used car salesman. I'm not here to I hear sometimes some people, it's just not my style. I think building trust and almost being a little bit more on the conservative side, like how we think about our valuations, how we mark our books. We tend to always think about like, let's just be a little more conservative. Let's just be a little bit more thoughtful. And we can explain it very well. And we can explain, look, if you wanted to look at the super optimistic side, obviously you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot and you want to be competitive, but being really thoughtful and so I think that's a big part of it. I think the other part is, I call it the say to do ratio. And this is like a big theme for me. My dad, he just passed away, and he always loved that phrase of like the say to do ratio. And what it means is, how much do you say you're going to do to how much you're going to do? Like that numerator denominator effect.
Yep.
There's and it's something I hold myself very accountable to. So when I think about our LPs and I think about our fund and I think about like what I told them I was going to build to what I am building. We talk a lot about being hands-on investors and being really close to our founders. And, I have to brag a teeny bit. But yesterday, one of our founders, I hadn't met him in person because he lives out of town, and he happened to be in town and came to our happy hour. And as he was leaving, he's like, you don't understand. Like, you are such a champion. And I was like, oh my God, just like I was going to hug him. Like, it made me so happy. But, it's one thing to say it, and it's another thing to see that others are appreciating the work that you're putting in for them.
Yeah.
So for us, that's really important. And I think our LPs notice that. We try to have a lot of opportunities for our LPs to meet our founders, because honestly, that's like the best part of ventures, right? Like
Yeah.
great founders are just like the most exciting thing in venture capital for me. And
Amazing.
good returns. Let's not go.
So you're a big fan of Zarna Garg's mantra, only the practical survive. How do you instill this focus on practicality in the founders you back, especially when they're chasing big moonshot ideas?
So there's a saying that says, like, feet on the ground, head in the clouds. And I think that is so true for founders. When you're pitching, you have to have a big vision, right? Like, one of my favorite questions to ask a founder is always like, how does this get big, right? Like, I want to give them a shot to paint that big vision, to tell me how are they going to change the world. But the one thing that you and I both know is that, like, if you don't get from 0 to 1, 1 to 10, 10 to 100, you don't get to a billion,
Yeah,
right? Like,
precisely.
There is a part of venture, of being a founder, that, like, big ideas are great, but, like, it's all about, like, one foot in front of the other, plop, plop, plop. And some
Yep.
of it is not, it's not very glamorous. There's the, whole YC, do things that don't scale.
Yeah.
Like, all that is so real. And the way I always think about it is, like, how do you ignite the flywheel? Like, it's like a little train that, like, there's a little train that could, right? Like, those first little, like, you're just
Yeah.
climbing uphill. And then eventually it starts to move.
Yeah.
But that idea of how do you climb? How do you start I think that is very, like, I always talk to our founders about that, of, what are you doing in the next week, in the next month, in the next 3 months? How are you thinking about those baby steps? But yes, you have to have a vision of the big picture as well.
That's great. And just to supplement, there's a book by Bill Allais from MIT called Disciplined Entrepreneurship. It's like a 24-step kind of system that he found works well for the successful startups who went through MIT's kind of entrepreneurial accelerator. And it reminds me of that, because the early steps are just taking your time with product market fit, and just finding a beachhead market, and just validating that the idea is indeed something people want, and not just something you think is pretty cool. And also not, investing too many resources too soon into, let's say, building out a full product or something.
What's the Reid Hoffman, like, if you're not a little bit embarrassed of your first product, you
Yeah.
launch too late. And I am such a believer in that.
Yes, that's a great quote. So you've emphasized the importance of early adopters as partners who believe in a founder's vision before it's fully realized. What advice would you give founders on identifying and nurturing those critical early champions?
So this is a question that is near and dear to my heart, because we talk a lot about finding those first enterprise clients. And it's interesting because, as I was telling my background, I started with Fortune 500 P&G, huge companies, and then ended up in a teeny tiny startup that scaled. So I think that a lot of founders don't have that experience, never worked at large companies, and they feel that, like, well, you have to get to the CEO, and you have to be introduced to the CEO of Walmart. But here's the catch. CEO of Walmart is not going to, like, hire your AI for whatever, right? Like, AI for cybersecurity. Like, he's not making those decisions.
Exactly.
He has a whole team underneath him. So while it's great if you can get those introductions, at the end of the day, you have to think really strategically about who are the champions, who are the people that are close to the decision makers, who are the people that are going to be in the room that's going to be making the decisions. So it's really interesting, because one of the lessons that I always talk to my founders about is not only about finding a champion in a company, but multiple champions in a company. And I'll tell you why. One thing that, again, people who haven't worked in corporate forget, corporate people move all the time.
Yeah.
They change jobs all the time.
Yep.
Now, sometimes that's positive, because it means that if they use your product and they love it, they might take you to a new place, and now you have a new client. So that's great. But what I've seen happen more than once is, like, you put all your eggs in one basket, you have that one champion, you nurture them, and then the guy tells you he's moving to London.
Yeah.
You're like, what? I've been working on you for 6 months.
Yeah.
And the thing just falls flat.
Yep.
So I always say, like, up, down, sideways, like, spend, with these really critical early clients, like, spend a lot of time learning, who is around your stakeholder and how to get them all around.
Yeah.
The other thing that I think is really important is, startups have very few competitive advantages. Let's
Yeah.
just call it what it is, right? Like we're small, we're scrappy, we're poor. One of them is speed.
Yep.
One of them is over-serving our customer and being able to hone in. But the one that I find is a little bit underutilized is the founder mystique. And what I mean by that is, I remember being a corporate, warrior and being like, there's just an aspiration of the founder. And if you find somebody who's like, maybe a VP, maybe a mid-level manager, but now they're getting to work with the CEO.
Yeah.
He's a founder. And just milk that a little bit. It's interesting because I talk a lot about, when do you hire a sales team? And the problem with hiring a sales team too soon is that then you've broken that relationship too fast. And it doesn't mean that as a founder you have to do the whole sales funnel and be there for every meeting. You can at some point hire sales teams and have them negotiate, but always build that relationship and let them feel a little like part of your journey, part of the specialness that they feel. They want to feel that 10 years from now they're going to be like, yeah, I was first client and look at them now, right? Like that. I mean, and it's all positive. It's all good. It's very genuine. But I feel like founders sometimes forget because they're so up in the weeds that's a very valuable tool.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's the redemption arc,
Yes.
3-act play.
Yes.
It's like, it reminds me of MedPick, the acronym, and, sales teams might know MedPick. If not, you can check it out, MEDPICC. Sometimes they add another D. But yeah, it reminds me of an adjacent pattern where it depends on the type of startup you're doing. But I've seen in SaaS, for instance, if you feel like you can funnel your product through like a larger marketplace, like Google Cloud, for instance, they have great sales relationships existing. They have tons of contacts. So really, like, to get like a sales wing at like a partner to help push through like a reputable kind of right-hand man, I've seen that work wonders. One example is Flutterflow, the kind of low-code now visual IDE solution. They're a GCP partner, and as soon as that partnership happened, like, sales just skyrocketed. They went from pretty much, let's say, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands in revenue to millions, right?
And listen, I think that the world we're playing in right now, there's so much conversation, is SaaS dead? Is it vertical AI, whatever? I'd like to understand fully what the difference is, in my opinion. But the point is, as AI gets better, as you're able to build technology faster, as the competitive moats on the tech get lower and lower, you go back to distribution. You go back to really human traits of relationships. You go back to finding those early champions. You go back to, can you sit down with the guy at legal and figure out how to get this contract done? Right? Like, it becomes a very human part, but also, to your point, is like, that's like the early 0 to 1, but then the 1 to 10 is, can you unlock the distribution flywheels? Can you get yourself on these marketplaces? Can you build those? And sometimes, if you build the right relationships, if you have the right value proposition, you might find yourself in distribution channels where, like, you're the little guy, but doesn't matter. You're solving something they need.
Yeah, precisely. It's like that 0 to 1 is so critical. And I love that you said, put TLC into your early clients. I completely agree. Like, the founders, I mean, in the companies I've found success with, we were there with our early clients every meeting, holding their hand. And once we found the playbook that worked and the value structure,
then you can replicate
and that's reproducible, and you can get a sales team to reproduce that, right? That's great advice. So in your Tech Week panel, you talked about advisory boards being a founder's sandbox to fill gaps and open doors. What's one common mistake founders make when building advisory boards, and how can they avoid it?
So, it's a couple of them. The first one is thinking about the advisory boards, like, just taking anybody, right? Like, just because they're a big name, and not being strategic. Like, I always think of curation. It's like a puzzle, right? You got to think, like, this one gives me access to capital. That one knows people in the industry that I need. That one is a seasoned entrepreneur that's going to help me avoid mistakes. Like, really kind of think about the archetypes that you need in your hero's journey. So that's a good way to think about it. So I think that's one mistake I see. I think the other one that I see is sometimes founders over-index in advisors, and even when they're pitching, they're like, well, I must be great because look at these great advisors. And
Yep.
I'm like, honestly, as a VC, I'm like, what have they done for you?
Yeah.
Right? Like, great advisors that don't do anything for you really don't, they take up equity.
Yep.
So, I mean, if anything, it sucks for you, but it doesn't really help. Whereas if you do have like very specific roles and responsibilities, that's really important, which ties me to the third point I'll make, which is not having clear agreements. Have them on paper, have a vesting schedule. I never took an advisory role without a vesting schedule. I think it's not fair for the founder, it's not fair for me. Because sometimes, like, in a month, we're like, yeah, this is not going to work. And also, sometimes, you have to have a comfort level and an expectation from both sides of what's going to be delivered. Make it a reasonable time frame. There's good standard agreements out there.
Yeah.
But like, have it on paper, be very, very clear so that it really does do what it's supposed to be doing.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. So you've mentioned that independent directors on a board of directors can protect founder control and correlate with outperformance. How do you help founders identify the right independent directors to bring on board?
So, again, I'll go back to my theme of curation. One of the things I've noticed, particularly in venture boards, is a lot of times you end up with a lot of professional investors that have never operated. And not to put, look, some of these people are very, very intelligent, but it does help to have a voice that can speak to the experience of operating a business, the challenges, the overcoming. So I think that's where you can be very, obviously you're independent and your fiduciary duty is still to your shareholders.
Yep.
But at least you have some sense of reality, you have some sense of expectations. You can be a good mediator between the financial expectations of a purely financially driven board and a founder that's like, well, these are the realities of the business. And so I think that's where I'm a big fan of bringing in independent board advisors that are actually have operating experience. I think that can be very, very helpful. As I said, particularly if you have a board that's purely made of people that are more on the professional investing side.
Got it. So your GTM cheat sheet for turning enterprise maybes into signed deals is packed with insights. What's the toughest hurdle you've seen founders face in enterprise sales, and how have you helped them overcome it?
So I think that the biggest hurdle is actually not going through all the steps. It's sort of kind of jumping in and being like, introduce me to, the 10 largest players in whatever industry you want. I've never pitched anybody else, but I want to go pitch Microsoft. And the problem is you haven't sort of put in the reps and listen to your customer enough, and now you've burned your largest potential customer. So I think that's one of the hurdles and one of the red flags that I see with a lot of founders. When we think about helping founders land those enterprise clients, I go through a lot of steps. So I think the first step that's really, really important is let's have a conversation about what are you selling? What problem are you solving? What pain point? Is it a real pain point? Have you validated this with your clients? Is this really how they want it, how they need it? So, for example, I was talking to a founder earlier today who's in MarTech.
Okay.
And the conversation we were having is like, if you're talking to a CMO, your solution is a tiny little sliver in a huge wheel of problems that the CMO has.
Yep.
And when you started to go out with just that tiny little sliver, it just wasn't enough. So you had to fine-tune the message, figure out how to address it. And I think the other problem that I see a lot of times, particularly with enterprise SaaS, is, again, you're talking to a customer where your solution might just be one little slice of everything they do, and you might get very technical too fast, way too much lingo. You just lost them.
Yeah.
Like, they're like, I don't know what you do, whatever, right? So I think kind of getting eye to eye with the customer, nailing the value proposition, nailing your problem you're solving is the first piece. Very, very important. The second piece is, have you figured out a process? Have you sort of figured out how are you going to fill the top of your funnel? Are you going to conferences? Are you going through cold outreach on LinkedIn? Or whatever you're doing, like testing out the flywheel that works for you, that playbook, is so important. I have one founder who's like incredible on LinkedIn, and she has found incredible success. Her posts are amazing. People engage with her, and for her, that's her number one lead gen.
Yeah, that's great.
And it's great, works for her. But I think that again, I always say, like, I hate the word playbook because it has this assumption that it's like what like the silver bullet. And the truth is, I would say by the time a playbook's written, it's already been done to death, and you have to move on to something else.
Yeah.
So I think that's really important. I think the third piece is, like, be super honest about looking at your pipeline and your funnel. Like, is there enough? Are you talking to enough companies at the top? Are you talking to enough quality at the top, right? Like, if you're only talking to 10 companies a month, that might not get you there, right? Like, it's just like, a funnel is a funnel. The math doesn't lie. Like, if you have a certain conversion rate for every stage, like, it is what it's going to be. So I think that's also very important, of just like pushing them a little bit on that end. And I think for us, again, we're doing very early, but sometimes it's just like personal connections. I mean, I'm lucky that I've worked in so many industries, and I have a very crazy LinkedIn with a whole bunch of people, but it's really helpful because I'm like, oh, that person I used to work with 10 years ago, and now they're here, and you should go talk to them. But sometimes it is sort of being very deliberate with your network. One of my founders that she's probably one of the smart, like, she's one of the best leveragers of my network. And what she does that is super smart is she doesn't email me 25 names at once, because frankly, I'm going to be like, it's too much. She's like, every couple of weeks, she'd be like, hey, here are 3 people that I want to talk to. Do you know them well enough? Can I send you a specific intro so that I can talk to them? Sure, done. 3 people I can handle. She's doing great. Like,
amazing.
It's a little hack, but I highly recommend that. Like, bite-sized pieces, strategic on the sequencing of who you want to meet first, what you're learning from that one to the next one, can work really well.
Great points. So you've said that in the world of AI, deeply human skills will win when closing enterprise deals. Can you share a specific example of how a founder's human touch made the difference in landing a big contract?
So, as I said, like, what's interesting about AI is that it's like, it's such a race, right? It's changing so fast. It's innovating so fast. Technology, the problem with it, right, is like we're all getting faster and better. But the problem is if we're all faster and better, where's the differentiation?
Yep.
Where's the competitive moat? And some people will argue around data, and I'm a big believer in that. There's how you're using your data, how you're creating, leveraging that information, that can be very valuable. But the other side is the human side. And again, it goes back to like meeting the right stakeholder, nurturing that relationship the right way. We were just talking about, knowing how to talk to the legal team and figuring out what are the, what's going to get them over the hurdle.
Yep.
And sometimes it needs to be a conversation. It needs to be very, very human.
Yeah.
I think there's also, for example, just kind of understanding the game. So if you're working for a very large enterprise, maybe ask them, what are you going to need from me to even have this approved, so that you don't work on them for 6 months and then realize that you need SOC 2 compliance, which is going
Right.
to take you 6 months to get, and you're starting from scratch. Well, maybe you could have just started that 6 months earlier and start working on it. And then by the time they're ready to sign, you're ready to have them on as a client. You're ready for them to be a client.
I love that. And I find that even in my role as, CTO now multiple times, if I say, there's this great, Chroma vector DB, and, eyes glaze over, right? It's more about, it's education combined with sales in some capacity. It's just educating about how cool the tech is. And genuinely, I'm geeking out on these calls, right? But then bringing it towards, down to earth and putting it right in front of someone and saying, like, this is what I do. Like, we can do this together.
Yeah.
How can we make this look like something, very valuable to you, or what does that look like to you? And I love how you said that, like, what are the steps needed to actually get approval? Because that is that is a critical point in the sales cycle.
It's so simple, but I think so many people forget to ask, these big corporations have lists.
Yeah.
They're not making them special for you. They exist. You just have to ask for it. And it
Yeah.
could be incredibly helpful to get those early on.
Yeah.
Right? Like, had you known, and these things always take time.
Yeah.
And so, like, seeing how else you can parallel path to keep the process moving forward, rather than, like, waiting to get to the contract stage, about to sign, and they're like, oh, but
Yep.
here are the 12 steps that you need to follow before you can, get those done early.
It's another 6 months of procurement, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
So Carta's Q1 report, which you've cited, shows AI startups are becoming more capital efficient with lower dilution at every stage. How are you advising your portfolio companies to stretch their runway and maintain optionality in this environment?
So I think it's a really interesting environment. There was another study that's talking about how, AI, it's like Series A startups are smaller than ever. They have fewer people. So it used to be, I think the average was like 25, and now it's like 15, which is so interesting, right? So, I think all of us agree that, we're not all going to be replaced by AI anytime soon. I still think they're going to be CTOs and engineers and salespeople, but we can be a lot more efficient. And so I think that really kind of fully taking advantage of the efficiency that AI brings. I'm of the belief that every startup is an AI startup because, the same way that, of course, you build on the cloud, right? Like, nobody's got servers in their living room.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't, if you're building today, why wouldn't you, leverage the efficiencies that AI brings, right? It just doesn't make any sense. So every company will have different level, different scale of it, but every company has a certain level of AI. And so I really do encourage to think about efficiencies, to think about capital efficiency. I think that besides the AI conversation, there is the conversation of, we're all coming off the hangover of 2020, 2021.
Yeah.
Where, the ZERP era, way too much cash, crazy valuations that nobody could grow into.
Yeah.
You're seeing it already in the IPO markets that are challenged. So I think that there's just like a newfound appreciation for capital efficiency. And now there are tools for that capital efficiency. So it's a very good marriage. And you just have to be super conscious about it.
Got it. You mentioned in your San Francisco Sprint post that LPs are waiting for the IPO M&A window to unstick. How are you navigating this cautious LP sentiment when raising for Red Bike Capital or advising founders on fundraising?
It's, I think that venture is such a game of patience.
Yep.
Somebody explained to me, they said, venture capital is a great way to get rich slow.
Right?
So I do think that, it's been a challenging couple of years because there was an expectation that 2025 was going to be the IPO window, things were going to be wide open. We're starting to see good signs. We're starting to see a couple of IPOs trickle through. So I am cautiously optimistic, but I think that there were a lot of LPs that deployed very quickly in sort of the 2020, 2021 era that are now sort of waiting for, that capital to return so they can either reinvest or support additional managers. Having said that, so we're not fundraising, but I am talking to a lot of managers, and it's tough out there.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I think for founders, the reality is, it's a world of have and have-nots. And great companies still get funded. We are incredibly busy. We've done, we did 3 deals. We're about to do 2 more. Like, things are happening. It's not that founders are not getting funded. It's just the bar is very, very high.
Amazing insight. So at the PEF community dinner, you shared 9 distinct founder superpowers.
Gosh, now I need to remember.
Like withstanding pain and seeing around corners. Which of these traits do you think is most critical for founders navigating today's challenging market?
So I think the one that stuck with me and I loved the most was this idea of, like, I can learn anything fast. I think it's such an important skill for founders.
Yeah.
If you think about what's going on with AI, if you think about what's going on in navigating the changing landscape in VC and LPs, that idea of, like, adaptability and I think that's a mental ability to learn fast and iterate fast and, get lessons, figure it out, turn it around, go back at it. I think that was probably my favorite, most important skill, but there was a good list there.
I love that. And it reminds me of a quote by Henry Ford. Whether you think you can or you can't, you're right.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to learning.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's great advice. So you've talked about the post-acquisition phase being like a wedding, where the honeymoon ends fast. For founders considering an exit, what's one piece of advice you'd give to ensure they thrive in that next chapter?
I think that I've talked to a lot of exited founders, and we're both part of this incredible community, and I think that what a lot of people talk about is just being extremely self-aware that your role has shifted. You are moving from sort of decision maker operator to influencer to advisor. You're just in a different place. And I think that if those founders that sort of get comfortable with that idea do a lot better. Whereas the founders that feel like they still want to be making every decision, they still want to be driving the bus, they're just feeling like they're banging their head against the wall all the time because they're going to run into somebody else, into a much larger organization or structure that has a certain way of making decisions that may or may not agree with them. And the truth is, great, you had an exit. Think about it a little bit differently.
Yep, that's great advice. Yeah, we could dive into that for hours. Actually, that's a deep topic. I do want to get into kind of the AI and consumer personalization as a theme. So you've written about the shift from personalized products to personalized search powered by generative AI. How do you see brands adapting to this new conversational shelf to stay competitive?
So this is an interesting one because we were talking about the fact that I grew up in consumer and beauty, and I mean, people think that this idea of, personalization at scale is brand new, but actually Estee Lauder launched personalized foundation, these little, it was basically like paint machines, shook up the foundation at Macy's in the 80s, right?
Wow.
Yeah, this has been around for and even before that, this idea of the perfect shade match, the perfect skincare, the perfect hair care. And obviously that can apply. I've seen personalized vitamins, personalized hair care, personalized pet food, you name it. But the problem is that it always runs against the realities of supply chain, right? It's very complex, doesn't scale well at retail, right? It's very complicated. So you either have to have a machine at scale at retail that breaks down, you have to have somebody operate the machine. It's a nightmare. But and I've always had this nagging feeling that do people really, really want a formula that's like Rachel's hair care? Or do I just want shiny, bouncy, beautiful hair that works, right? And I think people really want the latter. People are really looking for, solve my problems. I want to sleep well. I want to be energetic. Give me that. I don't care if you have the same formula as me, whatever. I just want it for me. And so what I think is really interesting is as we're entering this world where, the world is shifting from a Google search where you might just say shampoo for dry hair to generative AI world where I'm going to be, I think I read somewhere the average is going from 4 words when you search to 34.
Wow.
So now you're going into shampoo for color-treated dry hair, blah, 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 da-da-da, and I live in New York City, and I have
upload
pollution.
Your genealogy, the whole thing.
Exactly. Think about, or think about your cat. My cat has allergies, and these are the types of allergies that it had, and it's tried these things, and it doesn't work. What else can my dog, what other cat food can I give my cat, right? Think about, but so it's very, very interesting because I think that what you're going to see with generative AI is hyper-personalized solutions of recommendations of products versus a formula that's just like an N of one. And it's much more scalable. But it's an interesting world for marketers because all of a sudden you have to think about your go-to-market, your value proposition in a very different way.
Yeah. No, those are great insights.
And, we're one of the things that I'm really, thinking a lot about is, in this world of generative AI, I think where it's going to hit first, we'll get to agentic shopping. We'll have to figure out how to pay for it. We'll have to figure out how to, have authorization process, validation, like all that's going to have to happen.
Yeah.
But the first thing that's going to happen is search is going to change.
Yeah.
So this idea of GEO, of generative AI search, of how your brand is discovered and appears in a world of generative AI, I think is really, really interesting, and it's going to come really fast.
Amazing. So in your post about AI-driven personalization, you mentioned data depth beats skew depth. Can you share an example of a company doing this well and how they've leveraged metadata to win in this new landscape?
I'm not sure I have a perfect example. I'm going to.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah,
but it's
it
something
just gets
that,
deeper and deeper.
Yeah, I mean, but what I am seeing is that idea of like, again, it doesn't need to be just like. If you think about it, it's like the whole idea with SaaS of like you have to productize,
Yeah.
right? You have to create products that fit all the needs, but you can't just be a consultant that creates a custom product for every single customer.
Yeah.
And the same applies to consumer. So I think that's the general thinking is that idea of like how to best serve your customers and how to surface what best serves your customer without having to create a new product every time.
Got it. So at the Halogen Ventures Future of Retail panel, you outlined 9 signals for retail's next wave, like community-driven experiences and generative search. Which of these trends do you think will have the biggest impact on retail in the next 12 to 18 months?
So I think there's a really interesting shift that's happening. We all came out of COVID thinking, oh my God, stores are dead. Nobody ever is going to shop again. Guess what? We're desperate for connection.
Yeah.
But it's changed a lot. So I think it's in the short term. I think that trend of thinking of retail as hospitality, thinking of retail as an experience, as a place that you go to entertain yourself, but still walk out with the products you want. I think that trend is really taking hold and will continue to thrive. And the brands that do it well. And it can also be on the B2B side, right? Like it can also be, if you think about like what you guys are building at Tavern of, maybe you're getting the technology solution that you want, but you're also part of the smartest group of CTOs and you have access to this incredible community.
Yeah.
Right? Like this idea that it's not just the product you want, but it's also the engagement is really, really interesting. And I think that there's such hunger for it, sort of post-COVID isolation. We're so fed up being in our own living rooms. I think people are really looking for that.
Yes. Yeah. The culture, for instance, we do these, shared lunches or these happy hours where it's the aesthetic. You're part of this larger group. It's a positive sum atmosphere.
Yeah.
And you really take that home with you and you remember that for months, sometimes years. We had a yacht party on Sunday. Actually sailed from Pier 81 right here around Manhattan.
Love it.
But people are posting like it was one of their favorite events ever. And that is just, that's something that hopefully they remember for life maybe. And yes, and also one other example it reminds me of is Pura Vida in Midtown. The Miami kind of restaurant. They have like, palm trees and they have the entire aesthetic inside. It looks like Miami. And I love that. Like I want to go back there just to feel like I'm in Miami for a second.
Like you have a little break. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's great advice. You've mentioned GEO or generative experience optimization as the new SEO. How can smaller retail brands with limited resources start optimizing for this conversational AI-driven search landscape?
So I will plug one of our startups here.
Okay.
If that's okay. So we invested in a company called Athena HQ, and that's exactly what they're doing. I think what's really interesting is that there are a few players that are sort of helping you understand how your company is being perceived by generative AI, which is different than SEO. So the way you have to think about the technical side of it, the way you have to think about what are the sources that they're referencing, which are different, that I think is really important. I think also understanding what are people searching for? How are people searching for your products? What are the type of prompts that they're using when they end up landing on your product? I think is really important. But I think what really got us excited about Athena, and why I'll pitch it, is that they're really about, well, what do you do about it, right? One of my big things is I love investing in data companies, but it has to have the so what. Like, I always say this, and it comes from my training. I know I was always a marketer, and it's like, what do I do with this information? Like, great, now I can drown in data, but like, what am I doing with this, right? And so, great, my startup is, I'm a pet food company, and 3 other brands are beating the heck out of me, and they're always appearing in search, and I am not. But how do I, what are the actionable steps that I can take? And so that's what Athena really does, and I think that's the way to think about it.
Amazing. So you've said that AI is touching every job description and that hands-on usage beats theory. How do you encourage non-technical founders to embrace AI in their businesses without getting overwhelmed?
Baby steps. Like just, I think it's, I keep on saying it's like, you don't learn to swim from watching videos. Like, it's as simple as like, start using ChatGPT for your emails. Start playing around with little functional things, and it starts to make sense. You start to understand how it works, how it thinks, and then you can start thinking about, bigger optimizations. I think the other part of it is, also, the flip side of that is I think it's really important as a founder to understand there are limitations. One of my favorite, I can't remember who said it, but was like, you have to think about AI as like slave labor. That's a terrible thing to say. But what it means is like, or actually better, it's like a really eager beaver, but not necessarily smart summer intern. So I'll take that example because I think that there's a couple of similarities here. The first one is you take an eager beaver summer intern. They think they know a lot, but they know nothing. And so you have to take a lot of time to prompt them. You have to take a lot of time to give them a lot of context, a lot of historical examples, right? People want to just start using AI and let it run, and it's like, and then it doesn't, it's terrible. No kidding, right? So think about like this eager beaver summer intern that you got to like train, and then the truth is like maybe you don't give them the highest stake job day one, right? And you watch it, you check their work. And so I think that's a great way to start sort of exploring, how you can use AI in your integrations is, think about it as a eager beaver, smart, but not necessarily not necessarily knowledgeable intern.
That's incredibly potent advice. I will say from even the technical side, like it's GIGO principle, garbage in, garbage out. The higher the quality input, the higher the quality of the output. Context is critical. These companies, they only train on the training data they have access to, and they don't have access to our thoughts yet. Or our internal kind of business resources, hopefully.
Well, there's a lot. I've seen a lot of startups that are trying to address that are trying to go into, company emails, company documents, sort of aggregate all that information so that you have sort of a knowledge base on demand. The hard part is there's a lot of them that are doing the same thing, but somebody's going to win in that space.
I would imagine they have to probably aggregate like Slack messages, like the meeting summaries, like the things that are in between the lines, to really get a comprehensive model. So in your WH the Tech podcast discussion, you highlighted domain-specific AI models as the next wave of scale. Which industries do you see as ripe for disruption by these models, and why?
So one area that I've been digging into and I think is really interesting, obviously healthcare, but the other one that I'm really kind of been digging into is market research.
Okay.
I think there's a future right now when you think about synthetic audiences, when you think about a little bit scary, but on politics, I think there's going to be a lot of disruption because of the ability of AI to create these synthetic audiences to be able to predict and better predict not only what people say, but what people actually do. So I think I'm keeping a very close eye on that space. It scares me a bit, but it is definitely happening. As I said, I think healthcare, you have very specific use cases. So we've seen, specific models on women's health, on mental health, cancer, right? Like very, very deep knowledge bases on very specific products. I'm curious what areas you're seeing.
So something that fascinates me is this idea of the echo chamber. So Sam Altman and OpenAI, they were publishing X posts on difficulties trying to get from GPT-4 to 5, like a breakthrough, because they're running out of training data.
Wild.
Yeah, so like if you exhaust the bounds of like the public sphere, it's like you have to think about what are those like moats out there that are like super valuable in terms of private data. And a lot of them are trade secrets, you know, like they're hidden by design.
Well, which it's interesting. Like we've seen a lot of like models for fintech, for financial institutions. I'm like, banks aren't going to be thrilled with you having access to their data, and they sure as heck don't want the competitor using it. Yeah. Right. So there are certain industries that by design have trade secrets, and it's going to be very, very challenging.
Yeah. I kind of see like the pattern of, it's like outsourcing and insourcing. The insourcing pattern are like the models that are living within the private data repositories and things within these organizations. They're handling, maybe they're on the C-suite at some point, and that agent is handling the internal affairs and all of the, you know, helping with operations, you know, finding an audience, sales, marketing, the whole thing. So domain specific, you know, if you're looking for, you know, something in like Stable Diffusion, for instance, like some models literally have different capabilities. They can generate images, for instance. Some have larger context windows. Some are cheaper at scale. Some you can daisy chain with agentic flows easier. Swarm from OpenAI is a great SDK. There's Crew AI, which I enjoy. So, yeah, I think the industries that like really will benefit. You mentioned healthcare. I agree. Yeah. I heard Larry Ellison, you know, at the Project Stargate announcement. He said his vision is to basically create vaccines for people within 48 hours. So it's like whatever medical condition you have, within 48 hours, you should have a personalized like vaccine for that or pill. And
I will say, in that point, I do agree with personalization.
Yes.
Right? Like this is one where there is that N of 1 does make sense.
Yes. So that, I mean, if that succeeds at any capacity, I think healthcare could just be completely disrupted because as it is right now, I mean, you know, we're still kind of nascent, I suppose, like in the depths of like, you know, what modern medicine can handle. But there's still like cardiovascular disease, there's cancers and things that we kind of have old school solutions for. Yeah. And it's not really been, you know, modified or revamped in a while. And sometimes people have to go out of the country even to get like experimental, you know, procedures and things. Yeah. There's fasting, there's like these, you know, ancient practices and things people try. So I would love to see healthcare disrupted, to be honest. I think having healthier people could help with the mental health kind of crisis too. Like it could have repercussions throughout the world. So definitely that. And then the other industry is robotics, I think. Yeah. I think robotics, I'm a huge geek about Optimus and, you know, the whole Tesla, you know, the whole, you know, XAI kind of effort right now. But personal droids, like I've been building Raspberry Pi solutions and like playing with Arduinos and things for a long time. But the physical world is still untouched by software. And that's just one way to like really permeate the physical world in a deeply impactful way. And having a humanoid robot in the home, I mean, that could easily, you know, dwarf.
I mean, the funny part is we all saw the Jetsons. By this point, we all thought we'd have, what was Edwina was her name?
Oh, yeah.
Like we all thought we'd have one. I mean, where are we? It's still not here.
Yeah. But we're kind of...
But we're getting there.
Yeah, we're kind of like following in the footsteps of science fiction. Like we're creating what we've already created like in our imaginations. So you can follow some of the sci-fi stories ahead just to see where the world's going to be at in 5-10 years probably. But yeah, that product, like the at-home robot, the first like mass market version, I mean, that could definitely be like, you know, a multiple of like the iPhone or one of those like major transformative products. So I would love to see that come to fruition.
Me too.
Within, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. We'll see. Yes. But yes, Rachel, thank you so much for your time. In conclusion, are there any kind of final thoughts you'd like to share with the audience as we conclude the episode?
No, I mean, I think if you want to get in touch, I'm very active on Twitter, X. Very active on LinkedIn, and I always like thoughtful conversations. So this was a great chat. So thank you for having me.
Amazing. Thanks, guys.